So good morning, everyone. I'm Adam Myers, co-director of the Health and the Public Interest Program with Dr. Adrian Fu-Berman, who is also on this seminar. And we're happy to have you here to our kickoff seminar for the spring series. We have a great talk in store for you. It'll be introduced by our moderator, Callie, momentarily. Meanwhile, I want to um, just say a couple words about the program and the seminar. So our program is a program that is now in its seventh year at Georgetown University, and MS that emphasizes the non-medical factors that contribute to one's health. In other words, social determinants of health, marketing influences of drug companies, all the things that affect health and healthcare outside of what we usually think about. So the seminar runs as follows. Anthony Fleg is our speaker today. Dr. Fleg is going to speak for about 45 minutes after a short introduction by Callie Haytian, who is the moderator. And following Dr. Fleg's talk, we'll have question and answers or discussion, first by students and then including the wider audience. And of course, Dr. Fleg is welcome at any time to engage the audience or to interact as he wishes during the talk itself. So welcome everybody, and I'm really glad to have this seminar series going again after a month-long break. So I'll turn it over to Callie.
Hi, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. I'm excited to kick off our spring seminar series, and I'm pleased to introduce you to Dr. Anthony Fleg. So Dr. Fleg is a family medicine physician who spends time seeing patients, teaching students, working with community leaders, empowering youth, and listening to elders. His work is primarily centered in how we can improve health in our Indigenous Native American communities. And Dr. Fleg has developed multiple interesting health initiatives, including a nonprofit named the Native Health Initiative and a program called Running Medicine that combines his work with Native American communities and his love for running. As a medical student, Dr. Fleg developed Farm Free, a national initiative of the Student Medical Association that was focused on eliminating pharmaceutical industry involvement with medical students. And additionally, he's a poet and writer, and he has a new book titled Writing to Heal, The Journey Continues, coming out soon. So with that introduction, I will pass it over to Dr. Fleg, and then I'll be back at the end for questions.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I am honored to be here, excited to Zoom all the way from University of New Mexico's campus in Albuquerque to Georgetown in the heart of DC, and hopefully can start off the semester with some good energy. I'd like you all to warm up with me for a moment. First warm up. It's probably cold over there. What's the temperature in DC today? I know y'all have been hit.
It's 17 right now.
All right. Yeah, we need to warm. I'm not gonna make you like get up and stretch and that as I often do, but just take a moment, push back from your screen, sit up nice and tall, put your feet firmly on the ground, and just let's breathe for 30 seconds together. Take some of the slowest, deepest breaths you've taken so far today. Beautiful. I always feel like we can learn and listen differently when we've sort of fully arrived, as opposed to our mind being wherever you were an hour ago or somewhere in the future. Just taking some deep breaths is a good thing. Second thing I'd like you to do, I'd like each person to put into the chat. We're gonna overwhelm the Zoom chat function. Put in something that you're grateful for today. And then go back to the chat and see what your classmates have put in. So I'm going to try not to be overtly political, but I'll just say that I am filled with just a real feeling of dread and a feeling of real sorrow, I think, for our country right now, in what we're about to see as the rhetoric. It's I guess without again making it political, for me as a healer, it's everything I don't believe in that is now going to be sort of official policy of our country. And I think breathing and I think gratitude are going to be two really critical ways, not just to get through it, but to meet that challenge with, um, the opposite, with love and with things that unify and allow people to identify as who they are, their gender identity, allow people to not worry about deportation after decades of being in this country, etc. All things that I don't think are healthy as a physician. Again, so if anyone, maybe you don't share my level of angst and deep sorrow at this moment, but if you do, I would just throw out, and I know y'all feel like you're in a counseling session here, that breathing and returning to just being able to slow down when our mind starts to race, and particularly with the climate that is, and then gratitude. I love this list here. Thank you, each of you, for sharing. Beautiful. So I'm going to share one piece of gratitude, and then I promise I'll get into teaching. One thing that I think for all of you, and my sense is this is a group of people that probably have some great life and leadership experience, is that early in your career and even this semester, finding people that can support your vision and can help lead you, is really important. So in 2006-ish, I was, as was mentioned in the intro, this med student who sort of took a big stand on behalf of my fellow medical students. And in essence, we were saying that the incredible industry interest in our medical education, with device manufacturers and drug manufacturers who just want to make billions of dollars, who don't care about health. We need to do something about it. And Dr. Hugh Berman was one of those few people that sort of mentored and supported and took my very very student oriented vision for what we needed to do, and really did a lot to make that have a bigger voice and a bigger platform, to the moment. I think you were involved in helping us get the moment where we actually introduced something at the Capitol, and talked about the harms that this sort of undue influence has on us. So excited I think it's the first time I've been in a Zoom room with you, Dr. Hugh Berman, and probably it's been 15 years since we've actually been in an actual room together. It's wonderful to have you here and to acknowledge and be grateful for you. So, all right, healing through strengths, culture, movement, and love. And I'm going to just share a few thoughts, a little bit about my work, and excited for the discussion. So write down some questions. I am presenting from originally Tiwa land that is current day Albuquerque, New Mexico, Indigenous land, as is the land of Washington, D.C., Northern Virginia, Baltimore, Maryland. I'm a father of 4 kids, wonderful, big little ones, ranging from 7 to 16. So this picture's a little bit old. Married to my wife, Shannon, who is from the Navajo Nation. Um, I'm a mover, and picture of me running with the kids. I'm a writer, and really encourage in putting these 2 slides here, the running and the moving. I encourage you all just to think of building a really diverse toolbox that includes the right side of the brain, the left side of the brain, includes, yes, moments of intense study and writing and reading, but also whatever your version of this is, if it's dance, if it's archery, if it's pickup basketball, finding ways that we can again sort of return back to a place that is balanced and healthy. So in my professional work are some of the things that I do, and I reflect as I hear today that basically anyone who works for the federal government in DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion positions is now out of work. I really reflect on my colleagues, brothers and sisters, a lot of whom are probably in the DC area, who, because their work is around the horrible concepts of diversity, equity, and inclusion, are unfortunately now told that their work is no longer. And just again, a bit of sadness in what that means for all of us. I do a lot of work on our campus, even so. I guess one other thing that I always come back to is I write, I blog, and by continuing to do that and not saying, well, I'm a med student now, I should put down anything that doesn't involve medical school. By continuing to do that, not only do I develop as a person and continue to have that as a tool for wellness, but then I can offer it, because it's still something I'm actively engaged in. I can offer it to campus. So I have these series where we'll meet every week for 4 weeks or so, and explore creative writing with staff and faculty and students as a form of self-care. I do a lot to get people moving, and I'll show you a video here in a few minutes. This is our School of Medicine's DEI office graphic, and I just think it's a beautiful way to invoke Dr. King's vision and what should be all of our vision of really ultimately a beloved community that is honoring of each and every person for who they are, and sort of bringing that into our DEI work. I also carry a lot of privilege. I encourage you, if you've never sat and just written and sort of listed privilege, but living in the US privilege, being able to hear and see well, not having mental illness, English speaking, male privilege, faculty privilege, a lot of privilege that has opened doors for me, and high quality education privilege, which I think, speaking to a group at Georgetown University, we share that privilege. How do we convert the privilege and the doors that have been opened for us to open doors for others is constantly my question. So when I was a med student, I realized that I wanted to um, continue to do a lot more than just be, in the classroom. And so that led to talking with some community leaders, realizing that I was at UNC Chapel Hill, just a few hours to your south. Originally grew up in Baltimore, by the way. So I'm from Howard County. Um, uh, let's see, went to University of Maryland, Baltimore County, UMBC for a year, and grew up in like the Columbia area, so not more than 40 miles from Georgetown. Um, uh, that led to a nonprofit that's called the Native Health Initiative, and um, a lot of community-based work to try to improve health in our Native American communities. I'm not going to be able to give you a full synopsis on Native American health and communities and culture. It looks a lot different in different parts of the country, but suffice it to say that it's a group of people that continue to bear big big consequences of colonization, of white supremacy, of racism. They live sicker and die younger than the rest of America. And in fact, there's a great paper. I'll try to put it up that was just sent to me that was called "The 10 Americas," and it sort of makes a point that we really have such stark differences across lines of particularly race and ethnicity in this country. When you look at just life expectancy, that it's really not one America, it's many Americas, and that probably makes sense to most of you all. So just some of the approaches that we use and sort of ground our work in with NHI. I really love the idea of your program. I don't know if you all call it HAPI, but that sounds good to me. The intersectionality and the way that this seminar even just brings thinkers and doers from really diverse parts of society. I don't think any of us, whether we go into public health, whether we go into medicine, whether we go into policy, when we go into education or law, we're not going to be able to solve incredible big problems like immigration and health inequities and just the broken US healthcare system if we stay in our silos. We need to have this sort of understanding that I can get good and focus on one thing because that's important. That allows you to be an expert and really helpful in that thing, but it doesn't mean that you shouldn't think of all the other blind spots that by becoming good at, let's say, law, that you don't need anymore to talk to your public health colleagues, your medical colleagues, your policy folks. I also love that you all are really putting a commitment to social justice, and really, I would say that to me is a moral sort of foundation for why are we learning what we're learning. We're really learning it to try to make our society, our world, our globe a more just place. And I don't think that's the starting point for most of our academic endeavors. So kudos to health in the public interest. And then, as I point out at the bottom, that you'll sort of hear people who are outside of university settings just sort of make comments that we study things and we learn things that aren't really pertinent to us people out here who, really just don't see how it connects. And so health for the public interest, I think it's long overdue. So expanding our toolbox for healing. You ready? I may have this order wrong. Strengths, culture, movement, and love. And I might just ask you to just think for a second. Have you seen in any settings that you've personally experienced, volunteer work you're doing or have done, using strengths, using culture, using movement, using love? Have any of those been apparent in in work that you've done, or even in your own personal healing work. We're all healers. And so even in the work that you do, you might think about how you incorporate strengths, culture, movement, and love. So um, medicine is an interesting sort of dogma in that it really teaches us exclusively how to look at what's wrong with people, their diseases, their addictions, what's known as social stressors, things like financial stressors, housing instability, living in an overcrowded um, house, living in an unsafe neighborhood, social determinants of health, again, normally sort of mapped out in terms of negative social determinants of health. I would say pretty confidently that I think our profession, now I'm speaking for medicine specifically, really lacks interest, curiosity, and even the words to asset map, to look at strengths or assets and what people and their communities do well and how we can build on those to improve health. So just a simple sort of thought, you walk into a doctor's office, but you also might walk into, I'm proudly a public health physician and a community organizer. And so I would say you also see it very similarly placed out in public health. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you? Yes, when you walk into a doctor's office, but also when a focus group happens in a part of DC, it's, around something like gun violence or poverty. And that sort of opposite question of what's right with you? What does this community do well? What do you as a person do well is really important. And thinking about how that changes the whole conversation and some of the power dynamics to acknowledge, yes, we might be here because you're in a doctor's office, or we're doing a focus group because this community really wants to see a safer community in the future. But we can also pay attention to what's going on that's right. So as I've gotten a little bit older, and particularly being around Native American communities, storytelling is a central way of sort of sharing knowledge. So I'm going to share this story as sort of a way to illustrate that, and hope that it's going to give a couple light bulbs in our room today. So this is my wife on our wedding day in the beautiful land of the Navajo Nation in northern Arizona. And to her right, in the red bandana, is her grandfather, Bahi Many Beads. And Grandpa Many Beads was a traditional healer known as a Tafli in Navajo culture, medicine man. He, unlike those of us who have a prescribed, couple of years of training, he was in his, I think, 50s before he was told by his elders that he knew the songs and ceremonies and prayers well enough to go essentially graduate and be on his own. And even in his mid 90s, he was still performing traditional ceremonies. In this case, he was performing the traditional wedding blessing and ceremony for us as the medicine person. So I think of if he walks into Georgetown Medical Center today, or walks into a clinic or hospital out here in New Mexico, that these 7 sort of descriptors of Grandpa Many Beads would be very likely, found on his chart and in the write-up. And there are probably things that you, in first glance, they don't seem necessarily offensive. But I sort of ask the question that what if we just changed our lens, and instead of, again, medicine, public health in general, being solely interested on what's wrong with people, to saying what's right with you. let's just pick one of these, for instance. So low educational attainment. Um, so a Native American person born in the 1920 sort of era, as you may know, Grandpa Bahi Many Beads, when he was born, wasn't actually a U.S. citizen. It took us in the 1920s before the USA decided that the first inhabitants of this land, native people, were actually going to be determined to were actually going to be considered U.S. citizens. So he was never from day one of life given a chance to do what all of us are doing here in higher education. He wasn't even given a chance. I think he went to about third grade, and then was essentially told school's done, and you can start working now in various ways. He ends up, among other things, working in uranium mines and all of the horrific health effects that incurs. But so by writing in my medical chart low educational attainment, I'm blaming him. I'm almost like assuming that he wasn't interested in education. He wasn't considered fully human. He wasn't considered fully American. And then so that's one part of it. But then I'm also missing that, even though I might not understand it well, being sort of trained in a formal education way, that he has a PhD equivalent in Navajo culture. I mean, this gentleman carries the songs and traditions and prayers and ceremonies of his people. And so, again, is low educational attainment or sort of this, PhD equivalent in Navajo culture more reflective really of this person that I'm trying ultimately as a health provider to describe and want to be honest with it. When I sort of reflect on this example, I never knew him as a physician. I'm just a family member. And when I see this list, it doesn't even ring to be in any way truth. It's a false attempt at trying to describe him as opposed to this strength-based list. So by not focusing on strengths, by being deficit-based in our thinking and our activism and our research, I think we do some pretty big harms and sort of violate that first principle of, first do no harm. We absolutely perpetuate racism and colonization. We really lose a chance to empower people because immediately, if you're the patient and I, as the doctor, give you um, a clear idea that the only thing I'm interested in is your knee pain. I'm not interested in who you are. I'm not interested in how your semester's going. I'm not interested in your ethnicity, the languages you may know, your community, your web of. If I'm not interested in any of that, then I'm only interested in your knee pain because that's what's wrong with you, or your pneumonia. I think it's hard to empower from that standpoint, and I think we dehumanize the health professions and feed into burnout. So there's a primer for those who are heading into nursing, medicine, clinical healing, but also into the public health realm, thinking always to be in that room when you hear a needs assessment, you're going to be the person who raises your hand and says, okay, needs assessment is fine. Did anyone do an asset assessment? Did anyone look at the opposite? So community X has a variety of needs. Did anyone think about asking this community what's going well, what they do well? Did we actually put our same intellectual rigor into mapping out what they do well? And by not doing that, I think it's coming from a real privileged and racist, when you think about communities that are most deficit mapped and people that are most deficit mapped, it's people that don't carry all those privileges that I listed earlier for myself. Healing through culture. Just going to show you a few kind of examples in my work. You can't separate traditional cultures, Native American cultures, from um, from important life ways and important ways of healing. And so I've learned things that I don't think I ever would have thought in medical school or an undergraduate, that I would be, promoting ceremony, traditional ceremony, as a tool for prevention. But um, there's beautiful work and beautiful kind of opportunities when we look at how traditional cultures of ourselves and of the people that we are honored and given the privilege to take care of can be a part of what we do and bring into healing. This is an event that's it's a winter sort of ceremony called Kesha, and it's also known as the Navajo Shoe Game or Moccasin Game. We sort of have brought it here to the big city of Albuquerque, where many young Native people, aren't as connected to their cultures. And in this ceremony that has some fun, and it's a little bit of like gambling and a predecessor to casinos. Um, it's teaching how we came to have night and day, and the different animals that play a part. So a little bit about healing through movement. I'm a big believer that we need to um, we need to move for lots of reasons, and our sedentary society doesn't necessarily make that super easy. Got buttons and automatic things for just about everything. We could barely move our hands and fingers through the course of a day, and we'd survive quite well, as opposed to some of the people that I take care of as patients still go out each morning and chop wood for 20 minutes to have the wood to put in a wood burning stove just to heat their house, and um, a lot of labor that goes into traditional ways. So this is a again example, me sort of continuing. I was never an amazing runner, but I continued to do it just to stay sane through all of my education, and then ended up sort of being able to connect Native American traditions around running, where running is revered and seen as something sacred, seen as something that is far beyond what we can measure on our GPS watch or upload to Strava. And so the idea of running medicine came to be. And if you look at this picture carefully, yes, there's kids doing what kids do well. They're running, um, and running barefoot, which is not a small thing out here in the desert, because there's a lot of thorns and there's very few places where you can actually run without shoes on. But if you look toward the back, you'll see aunties and uncles, even grandparents, women in hijab. A really beautiful thing is happening in that the kind of idea of running medicine is that we get entire family, and sometimes 3 or 4 generations strong, moving together, and at any speed that they can go, walking, running. Doesn't need to be competitive. It's more about being inclusive. And I'm going to show you a video. I'm going to transport you out to New Mexico here in a moment. Just to connect sort of my earlier talking about strength, this is a beautiful quote. Yes, we have historical trauma, but we also have historical gifts. So again, not focusing solely on the trauma, and running is one of those gifts. Moment. All right, so here is, without you having to take a plane ticket, a 2-minute transported to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and just a look at you might for a moment think about like in your mind, what comes to mind when you think of a running group, and then see a very different version here in ours. And actually, give me one sec. Let me make sure. I haven't shared a video for a while, so.
Mother Earth says, now take good care of me. Please do not hurt me. Hey, hey, yo. Hey, yo, hey, yo, hey, yo. And Father Sky says, now take good care of me. Please do not.
Kilo Solar Olin Xochipilli. And we are so grateful to have them here with us today. It's going to be a really beautiful way to open up this fall season for us under this beautiful blue sky and with this wonderful Albuquerque sunshine.
Us, please do not hurt us. Hey, hey, yo. Hey, yo, hey, yo.
All the ceremonies were asking for health, for love, for beauty, for the best way in our life, as on a personal level, family level, community level, world level, universal level, creational level, all of the levels. Physical, energy, emotionally, mentally, or whatever that we can conceive or not. We are thanks for our life, for our heart, for we are able to breathe, to love, to walk, to eat, to hug, to share, to talk, to dance, to sing. It's a simple and beautiful way, like all the essence of the ceremonies. We have guides in the four directions, the east, the west, the south, one by one. All the beauty, the peace. We pray for this generation. I don't believe the kids are the future generations. No, they are the future. They are the present.
To love, to love. Nahastan anila nijanne goshabothya.
Love, I'd love if you have a like a word or a phrase that you think of and just what you saw there, put it into the chat. Definitely probably not what your normal running idea of a running group. Most of y'all, if I said come join a running group, you'd go the opposite direction as fast as you could. Engagement, happiness, unity, joy, beautiful and moving, restorative community. Good. So believe it or not, that could be the kind of healing work that you do, and it might be as simple as you just continuing to try to be your best you, and maybe you'll be a public health leader who incorporates Zumba into public health trainings, or has your own version. Beyond just running and walking, I have done a good amount of work with hip hop and breakdancing, and so another sort of realm of where movement is healing. And finally, I'm just going to share that I I don't know when Dr. Fu Berman and I were last working together 20 years ago if I was calling myself a love activist, but for me, it's really important to ground my work in all that I believe in, as opposed to just saying I'm against, this, I'm against the Trump administration, I'm against racism. I want to be for, and I want to be grounded in um, the deepest values that I hold and that probably are very much universal. So even in our Native Health Initiative, we for many years we were funded, and we tell people we were love funded, love grounded activism. Spent maybe about $5,000 in actual money in the course of a year to do a whole nonprofit's work, and it's a beautiful thing to see that our ideas and your ideas for changing the world, yes, they could involve money, but don't let lack of money and funding be a reason to not push forward and do what your work is meant to be. In fact, as I reflect, when I brought the idea for the Native Health Initiative to my well-intentioned university professors in grad school in Chapel Hill, their sort of response was, well, it's a great idea. Why don't you write some grants, and in a few years, maybe it can get off the ground. And in my mind, we were already way ahead of that. And we weren't asking for their permission. We were about to make things happen just because there were good people at the table who really cared about seeing their Native communities improve. And we didn't feel like we needed money. In fact, money in some ways would have complicated sort of the early parts of our work, because it changes some of the power dynamics when people are getting paid to do that same work. And so with that, I'm ready for discussion and questions, and I hope I stayed to my time. Thank you again for having me, and I'll turn it back over to my student
Right.
co-sponsor.
Yes. Thank you so much. That was a really, really interesting seminar, and I'm sure there'll be lots of questions. If anyone in the HAPI program is ready with a question, we'll go through our students first, and then once the students have asked their questions, we'll move on to anyone else who may want to ask any. So all right, Hannah.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. I was wondering, what would you say your biggest learning experience or most fond memory has been in your community-based work?
That's a good one. I definitely don't in my mind, think of any moment that is beautiful and sincere as better or ranked against each other. I think, as if I could sort of put it into one, when you see people that feel that they and their communities are unheard or unlistened to, and you feel that and you see in a moment that by you showing up for them, and guess what, you don't have to have letters behind your name for you to make this kind of difference. You could do this right today, and I bet a lot of you are doing this kind of work and in your volunteering, but just to make people see that they actually are heard and seen, is just sort of what makes me feel sort of a sense of fulfillment, feel a sense of, I mean, I got through all these doors to become a physician, but not just to become a physician to build, you know, in a capitalist way, wealth, but to build health, to build a community and to bring people along and to open that door for someone to let people in because they've let me in, but I'm not really opening the door for me. I'm opening the door because I'm going to bring some other people in who I want to amplify their voices.
All right, we can go to Aubrielle next.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. And I was wondering how you suggest future public health leaders and folks who are interested in the field balance their work, their own personal advocacy missions, and rest and being able to just enjoy and experience happiness, and how to the tools that you've used to balance all three of those things in life.
Good question. Really good question. By the way, I put in the chat the article that sort of came to mind that I think you all will find quite interesting. Again, going back to just where we started with breath and we started with gratitude. There's a lot to be angry about. There's a lot to be frustrated about. And if we're passionate and really care about our work, I think anger and frustration are going to be part of, particularly if you're willing to say boldly, I'm for justice, I'm for saving our planet, I'm for inclusion, I'm for everyone being able to define which bathroom they use and which identity they choose, then you are going to meet a lot of a conflict and a lot of energy in your life that you could bring home to your family, your partner, your pets, your parents, your siblings. So I think as I've sort of shared in different ways, like my work can never be so important that I stop taking care of myself. Because if I go on that slippery road, then I think I'm ultimately not going to be a whole lot of use for people around me. I'll give you a really very specific example. Yesterday I sat and I used brain energy, but I didn't move my body at all. And there was an event, as you may know, I don't know how big it was in the DC area, but it was a national day for racial healing. There was a big event that, I was sort of thinking about going to, but then I thought, yes, I could do that. And I'm sure there will be some good connection and some importance there, but I need to move. So I went in and played old man pickup basketball because, again, I just have to sort of, and you have to constantly, even this semester, just constantly, be willing to check in and not ignore what your body and your mind is telling you. If it needs prayer, take time and pray. If it needs movement, take time. If it needs 30 minutes of being creative in the kitchen, do that. And it's just really important. Otherwise, we become burned out and we, are not good to anyone. I'm actually on a sabbatical right now I'm not even supposed to be on my campus. I snuck in, and the process of applying for a sabbatical showed me how little rest is valued among particularly health professionals, that it's really going against the groove, and almost no one takes a sabbatical, even though it's in our job description. And it's sort of equivalent to like if school teachers said, nah, I don't need summer break, I'll just work through the whole summer. That's sort of in essence what health professionals on my campus, and probably Georgetown's campus as well, do. So you're definitely, as a health professional, you're entering a world that values work and overworking yourself and undervalues rest and rejuvenation. And so you have to sort of be a part of starting with yourself and your own example, because you're going to soon have students and mentees who look ultimately not to the words you say, but just to how does this person show through their life that they balance rest with activism, rest with advocacy, rest with their research or their scholarship or their teaching.
All right, Michaela.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Dr. Fleg. I really enjoyed a lot of the topics discussed, specifically with the running medicine program. I myself have gotten into running recently and have just really loved the way it made me feel mentally and physically, and seems like it can be a really good community. And my question is, what has been the most rewarding part about working with programs like that?
I think one of the things is like I can sit all day as a doctor with a stethoscope around my neck and tell people to eat low salt diets even though I eat high salt diets, and tell people to exercise even though I'm sedentary, and tell people to pray and meditate even though I don't pay attention to my spiritual health, hypothetically. But when I go out and you saw me just sort of running with the kids, like now it's a moment where the only thing that matters is that I am moving with people around me, that I'm actually practicing. It wouldn't work for me to stand on the side and say, in a big loud voice over a loudspeaker, here's what our workout's going to be today, and then sit there. I, just like the sort of simplicity of that. The only thing that I'm needing to do out there is just be silly, have fun, connect with the land below me, the air above me, the people around me, and jump right in and be a part of it. And that to me is sort of refreshing, to the point that people say, "Are you really a doctor?" I mean, all we do is we see you in running clothes, and they're really surprised. Some of them, I think, still to this day don't believe that I actually am a physician. So I take that as a compliment. That means I'm able to just be a playful human being and not anything else when I'm out leading people through movement.
Francis.
Hi, yes, thank you so much. I am curious. I think when the idea of culturally sensitive healthcare first even got on my radar, I was learning about um, tribally run clinics and hospitals. And I'm curious if you had any experience working with tribally run hospitals, and if there's just more of an inclination to, in these atmospheres, approach the person as a whole instead of from this like deficit perspective. And if considering all that, find it effective.
Great question. Y'all, the best thing you can get when you teach is really nuanced questions that tell you that people are listening in a deep way. So I'm going to tell you a story. I saw a patient recently in a tribal clinic that I do work. It's about 40 miles from where I'm sitting here at the university. And the gentleman came in, and he had what looked to me to be shingles, a really painful skin reaction that's sort of a reactivation of the chickenpox varicella virus later in life. And he had already consulted a traditional medicine person who told him why that this had happened to him and what he needed to do, to make things right. And I listened. The first important part was just creating that trust that he would even start to share about what he was told. Many people are not even going to tell you that they use traditional herbs or seek out traditional healers because they're afraid in a colonized world that is not respected or valued. And ultimately, whereas you could have, in a very Western medicine sense, you could have reprimanded the gentleman for not seeking care earlier, and the things that are sort of our mainstays, and antiviral medicine and steroids to calm down the inflammation. But that would have been in my mind, not effective, not productive. And I really took it more as a moment to affirm his decision to first seek out traditional healers. And I was sort of his plan B when he wasn't getting better, to come up with a plan that I said, number one, I want you to continue doing the things traditionally that you were told by the medicine person to do. I want to affirm that I don't need to know in my medical sort of mind why or how that's going to work. I just felt that it was really important to make it clear that I was in no way saying to not do that. I wanted to validate the traditional medicine part. And in addition, let's have you start taking this medication. And so ultimately, when he comes back a week or two later, feeling much better, I think he and I both agree that both the traditional medicine side and the CVS medicine side were part of what helped him to heal. And I don't think parsing that out any further is going to be helpful or useful. But again, having someone that comes with a formal education background, as you all are going to be, that also goes out of your way to validate and is open to and encouraging of traditional medicine is beautiful. There are some native healthcare facilities where right alongside one clinic that's here in our Albuquerque community has a traditional sweat lodge that is sort of used for purifying and cleansing and deeper level spiritual healing, akin to a church, a synagogue, a mosque, but maybe even something that's different. And that sits right alongside their behavioral health program. And so they have clients that will do one-on-one psychotherapy with a counselor weekly, and then once a month as part of their program, they'll also do a sweat lodge, and sort of understanding that the two can work beautifully together, and that they're not countering each other, and that each maybe addresses realms that the other doesn't quite address. So thank you for that question.
Okay, we'll get this last question from CJ, and then we can open it up to the rest of the audience.
Thank you, Dr. Fleg, for all of this. I've really appreciated it. I guess my question is more about like the future of your organization, maybe any like future initiatives or plans that you are working on, and if you could shed light to some of those.
What's the bumper sticker says? A day where the military has to hold bake sales, and the Girl Scouts are overly funded. I'm getting that completely wrong, but man, CJ, I have an answer for you, but I don't know yet if I've fully grown up enough to know what I'm going to do when I grow up. First of all, as a real concrete thing, everything that you all dream into being in the world, whether it's a human being like my kids, or it's a being like Native Health Initiative, which was sort of a child of mine, you have to let go at some point, and that's a hard thing. There's even this term founder syndrome, where people that found particularly like nonprofit and advocacy and activist sort of groups have a real struggle with letting go, doing the equivalent of like letting your kid go to college because you're tugging them. So 2 years ago, I actually, with my wife and I have really been side by side in our activism work, and I think that has been a real. There's occasionally some drawbacks because you're sort of forced at some points to bring work into the home, but a lot of my work and even my kids growing up has just been the whole family comes together to conferences, to rallies, to meet with health profession students. And I think had I just been doing that work on my own and trying to be a full-time doctor, I probably would be not married and have a pretty lousy social life and family life, kids that don't know me. So yeah, so my wife and I handed off the organization. We were probably developing a little bit of founder syndrome, 18 years of running a nonprofit, in addition to, in my case, trying to be a full-time, physician, and it's a lot. So I'm sort of in this next stage, hoping to continue to support organizations and communities, and really use my privilege and my knowledge to improve health in communities. But exactly what that's going to look like, I'm still trying to sort of see. There's a project I'm involved in right now where we're trying to empower Native American hairstylists to deliver information and educate around COVID and flu vaccines and the importance of vaccination. So just as an interesting, real concrete example from my life, like the pickup basketball from yesterday night, how I can, with just a little bit of time and energy, be a part of not teaching, but actually just empowering the hairstylists who are trusted messengers of their clients to then deliver the information about COVID and flu vaccines and why to get vaccinated. So great question. Great question. When I grow up, I'll have a better answer for you, CJ.
Okay. If anyone else in the audience wants to ask any questions, you can raise your hand or also type in the chat. And then it also looks like we have another HAPI question in here in the chat from Mickey. And she said that you mentioned getting started with little to no money. How would you recommend getting started when this is the case?
That's the only way I know how to start things. Because if I pulled the 23 of us in this room together and I said, before we start this project, which is going to be Save Our Democracy, or whatever we're going to call the next 4 years of our activism work, and I said, but you know what? I'll give you each $5,000 to start. Now I'm not quite sure whether Francis or Michaela or Peter or Katie or John or CJ or Jackson or Jennifer, are you here for the money, or are you here because you're down for the cause? So I'd much rather say to the 23 of us, anyone that's not up for saveourdemocracy.org, feel free to not be a part. But those who are, let's put our minds and hearts together. Let's heartstorm, let's brainstorm what we want this to look like, and just sort of thinking energetically how those two different paradigms create different energy and different involvement from the beginning. To know, for instance, that none of us are getting paid here. We're all here because we believe in something, is, I think, it's a unifying way, and a way that you can figure out when you do need money. In my experience, the funding will be there because you've sort of put an energy into the world that just attracts people to want to support that. You've clearly not. So if I go with that first paradigm, the first person we ask to partner might say, well, wait. Those 23 people got the money, 5,000 each. Why didn't I get money? I don't want, no thanks. I don't want to be part of what you guys are developing. So I think we overestimate in a very capitalist world that just sort of frames and commodifies everything about our thinking. I think getting good people in the room who care about an issue and are willing to make things happen is much more important than getting a big pot of money and then forming the room. That's activism 3.0. You're not supposed to learn that until grad school, but.
I see another question in the chat. And they asked, what suggestions do you have to shift the mindset of Western medicine to become more aware of the domains you have incorporated into your work?
Yeah, and I'm seeing Dr. Hugh Berman's comment. Anything can be done with volunteers. People are more committed when money is not involved. Um, gosh, these questions are hard ones. Good hard question, Terry. Thank you. You know, we um, we have a long way to go, I think. I sometimes wonder if medicine, even cares enough to do any shifting. Um, I think definitely as the people who practice medicine continue to become, wasn't that many years ago that only white men of privilege and wealth became physicians. And so that's sort of our foundation for not just medicine, but for who became university professors, who became lawyers. And so many different professions, I think, have this just Western European centric idea of how things are that is harmful to anyone who that does not come from um, that same community. And it's really harmful to all of us. And in terms of how to shift, I mean, I guess I do it through my teaching. I do it through um, my patient care. I look at each encounter with a patient, regardless of their background, as a chance for me to rewrite how I think medicine could be. And actually, that question I asked you all at the very beginning, it's a common one when I walk into a patient room. What are you grateful for? I want to put energy into the room that is we'll get to we'll get to the medical stuff. I'm absolutely going to make sure I take care of things that that person needs medically, but just starting that conversation with what are you grateful for, or what do you I have some fun questions. If they were to make a movie, here's a good one. Here's a good one for y'all. You can think about your own answer to this. If they were going to make a movie about your 2024, what would the title of the movie be? Man, that's such a cool, fun play in the sand kind of question that just sort of takes off all this guise of I have to sit up straight and I have to, the doctor's coming in. Yeah, so think about that. What would the movie be called? Adam, can I hear your answer to that question? What would the movie that's made about Adam's life in 2024, just the year 2024, what would the title of the movie be?
So I don't know about a title. I mean, I find in my own life that I'm getting more involved in community things. And, I'm partially retired, and I guess maybe the title would be finding the way for the rest of my life.
And which Hollywood A-list actor would you choose to play Professor Myers in that movie?
So, that's a great question, and I don't know. I mean, so, I'm thinking it might be fun to work with Jeff Bridges on that kind of thing because he's kind of got a good sense of what's right and wrong, and also a great sense of humor, and interested in, arts and everything else.
Nice. So then just having fun with this, then 5 minutes into the interview, patient interview, um, Professor Myers and I actually get down to the knee pain he's been having and the trouble he's been having paying for medications and et cetera. But it's just a different way to see people and not patients, which I think was an article that I shared with y'all, seeing whole people, and everything that makes them who they are, not just patients, which is the medicalized sort of part of them that can be summed up by their labs, their chronic diseases, the medications they're on, their measurements, etc.
Okay, well, I think we're reaching the end of our time together. If there are any last thoughts, now would be the time. Otherwise, thank you so much for a really interesting seminar. And I think this is a great way for us to start off our spring semester.
Yeah, and I
Thank
want
you
to
so much, Anthony. It was great.
yeah, I want to thank Callie for a great job today, and Anthony. I don't think the students are aware of all of the effort you made at finding out. It was obvious, I guess, but about what their program is and, who the other speakers have been. You and I have corresponded about all of these things. So, great way to engage by understanding your audience and meeting meeting them halfway as opposed to just talking to them, right? And hope to maybe see you out at Navajo Nation where I sometimes tramp around.
I told Professor Myers I wasn't going to do this talk until I knew a little. I didn't go down to like I need bios in each of the wonderful students in the program, but I did want to see sort of the bigger picture. I had fun looking at the sort of materials online about this program and consider me now a part of the community that is this program going forward. I'd love to come back. By the way, I put into the chat one more fun little nugget. I stay very involved in the public health community, and so this is a blog of sort of more medical, like clinician-oriented people who are in the American Public Health Association. But my recent post is why adults need to play more, and so again, I enjoy sort of countering, yes, the injustices work with just my mind and my heart talking to me about what's important that we should talk about. So you'll probably look on the blog and see that many of the posts are very serious, issues of health policy and public health policy, and then this crazy piece about why we should play more. So with that, play on today, and thank you all for your amazing energy. I can feel it all the way over here from New Mexico through those great questions. Feel free to reach out. I'll put my email in the chat if anyone didn't get it. Onward, andale.
Great. We'll look forward to seeing everybody back next week. We'll have a great talk on some of the challenges faced by folks in the Appalachian region in terms of public health, et cetera. And maybe we can take some of the positivity and appreciation for their culture into that talk based on what Dr. Fleg has brought up today. So see you next week, and thanks for coming.